Good afternoon. I want to thank Maryland Public Television for giving me this opportunity to offer some minority thoughts on today's state of the state in Maryland. And I want to thank all the Marylanders watching today for taking the time to follow the events of our state government. As you heard from the governor, we are in serious times. But what the governor didn't tell you is that in many respects we are here due to actions taken in Annapolis. For years, the majority party in Annapolis has passed legislation that may have benefited them politically, but has hurt our state and us in the long run. Frankly, we are finding that because of those choices, we are in worse shape than we were just 2 years ago. Governor OMalley is basing most of his budgeting decisions on getting a federal bailout, a bailout that will be financed not just by you and me, but by our children and our children's children. The governor is hoping to be bailed out for the mismanagement of our fiscal house with money that the federal government just does not have. You and I can't just print our own money, but that is exactly what the federal government is going to do while giving Annapolis no incentive to change its harmful ways. $3.5 billion may come from Washington in the coming weeks, but that money is really coming from you and me in a time when we can't afford it. In this difficult economic climate, with Maryland's unemployment rate at a 15-year high, the governor has not changed his budgeting approach. He's planning on more and more spending of our money while ignoring the crisis that we're in. Even before a bailout comes, the governor's budget increases state spending by about $800 million and puts us in worse shape. Most Marylanders didn't support raising taxes in 2007, but Governor OMalley pushed through a $1.3 billion tax increase, the largest tax hike in Maryland history. We were told this would finally end the long-term problem of structural deficits. He said he had to do this to, quote, put Maryland's fiscal house in order. Well, the state is not only facing a nearly $2 billion deficit next year alone, but we are projected to have a significant structural deficit until at least 2014. This will continue to jeopardize Maryland's priorities long into the future and hinder the ability of our economy to rebound. Budget experts in the state have warned the governor not to ignore these deficits, that doing nothing will do us more harm in the long run. But that is exactly what he has chosen to do. The governor has emptied state reserve funds, transferred funds from one state account to another, and used budget gimmicks in his proposal. He's doing the exact opposite of what experts are telling him to do. And now the state won't have those funds and reserves to go to if this recession gets worse. I hope that the governor would not first choose to fire long-time dedicated state employees. In fact, he told us all last year that if they took furloughs, layoffs probably wouldn't be necessary. Now we know that just wasn't the case. He's proposing to fire 700 workers during the worst recession in decades and jeopardizing more employees' livelihoods in the future. He put firing people at the top of the list while he increases positions in his own executive office. There's more. Governor OMalley is cutting positions in public safety and corrections while increasing positions in the state's university system. He's cutting positions in the state's long-troubled juvenile services system while increasing positions for his executive boards and commissions. He's cutting positions in Veterans Affairs while protecting more than 7,000 political appointees he gets to appoint throughout the state. He's raised salaries significantly for those political appointees, hired a sports marketing director for more than $100,000 a year, created an unnecessary bureaucracy with the new State Department of Information Technology, and is even opening foreign trade offices in Brazil and the Western Balkans. He's doing all of this while slashing school aid to our poorest districts and neediest students and taking more out of our classrooms. He's cutting essential transportation funding while committing tens of millions of more dollars to program open space purchases. Yes, preserving open space is important, but in these difficult economic times, we need to help Marylanders first instead of paying inflated prices for questionably valued land to politically connected sellers. In tough economic times, we must have the political courage to only do those things that make sense, not try to carve out a political legacy. And by choosing to pass the pain down to our local governments through burden shifting, the governor is passing the pain on to us in the form of higher local taxes and fees. Your struggles and the tightening of your own household budget are being ignored. I and many others warned the administration and the majority in the legislature that the economic storm clouds were gathering on the horizon, and now was not the time to put additional burdens on Marylanders. Others warned that the administration was too slow in making the tough economic decisions facing the state. But these warnings were ignored, and they continue to be ignored. The economic situation that could have been manageable is now more difficult to control. By this administration's own actions of raising taxes and failing to rein in the rate of growth of spending right before a recession, they have made an already bad situation much worse. Recently, voters approved slots after it was blocked by legislative leaders under Governor Ehrlich. Back in 2004, then Mayor OMalley blasted slots as a false choice by saying, quote, "A lot of this gets presented as slots versus taxes," end quote. Then 3 years later, this governor said it was a choice between slots or more taxes. He said that slots money would go to education. But now in another about-face, Governor OMalley and his supporters in the legislature plan to put slots proceeds into the state's general fund that can be used however they see fit, with the likely beneficiaries being their political supporters, not Maryland's children and teachers. It is almost a certainty that there will be no new money from slots proceeds going to education, because while they may be put in the front door of the Education Trust Fund, it will quickly go out the back door of the state's general fund. The failure to solve our long-term fiscal problems and draining our limited emergency reserves further harms our state's ability to borrow money while endangering our coveted AAA bond rating. If we are ever to come together to solve these daunting problems and chart a new course to prosperity, we must first have the confidence that our leaders in Annapolis are looking out for our best interests. Going forward, there are issues that need to be taken up in addition to this budget mess that have been so far ignored by the governor and the legislature. Controlling our soaring energy costs and securing our state's driver's licenses are just two examples of serious issues that we need to address. Many promises have been made, yet little progress has been shown on these matters. These issues have bipartisan support in the General Assembly and the wide support of Maryland residents. Energy costs are both a national and local issue of concern. Governor OMalley promised to stop the BG&E rate hikes and to bring down energy costs in Maryland. After more than 2 years, we know that was just a series of empty campaign promises, not a true commitment. Rates have gone up, and those in charge seem to be simply shuffling the papers. Under Governor OMalley and his hand-picked Public Service Commission, electricity rates in the BGE area have gone up more than 90%, while the members of his PSC got huge salary increases and bigger staffs. The rate hikes weren't stopped, and in fact, they have almost doubled under Governor OMalley. The promises he made that help would be there for us, but that's not so. The Energy Assistance Fund, which is set up to provide help to pay people's electric bills in emergencies, is nearly dry. And despite pledges by the governor and the House and Senate leaders, many people's electricity is being shut off during these cold winter months.